Welcome to Greg Ducharme Golf. I am Greg Ducharme, and this is your BMW Championship preview. Can't believe it. There's only 2 events left, 8 rounds of golf left in the 2026 PGA Tour season, and we're going to break it all down today. I'm really looking forward to it. We're headed to Bellerive Country Club, which was the host of the 2018 PGA Championship, also the host of the 2008 BMW Championship, which was won by Camilo Villegas. We'll get into what happened in 2018. We're not going to talk much about 2008. That was quite a bit ago. But the last time we did see Bellerive was also in August, and it was the PGA Championship. So we'll take a look at that as a big data point for what this golf course entails. There were also some changes made after the 2018 PGA Championship that we'll get into. Of course, we're going to go through some of the key stats and the players in this field who meet those standards and are the best in the field at these stats. But basically, we're looking at 50 players remaining, and they're all trying to get into the top 30 in the FedEx Cup standings to move on to Eastlake. But more importantly, this is a golf tournament on the PGA Tour that will have a winner. If you're playing fantasy golf, there will be an optimal lineup. If you're playing one and done, there will be a winner. If you're betting, there's tons of opportunities this week. And we're going to give you all the information you need to handle any of that. Or even if you're just watching and you want to know what to expect, you want to know which players to watch out for, how the golf course is going to play, this is the video for you. So I would like to invite you, if you enjoy what you're seeing here, and you enjoy what you're seeing on this channel and you like the preview content, I would invite you to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Who do you think is going to win the BMW Championship? And are there any players that you're questioning? Is there somebody that you're on the bubble for? Maybe you want to start them in your fantasy league. Maybe you're interested in sprinkling a little wager on them. Who are those players? What are your thoughts? That's what we're here for. And that's what we're here for each and every week. We'll even be making videos like this into the fall. So I encourage you to like and subscribe to the video, and also make sure that you leave a comment and ask those questions in the comment section. I've really enjoyed hearing from all of you. I've enjoyed interacting with you, and we've had some really good situations. We've had some of my advice has gone really well for some of you, and some of it's gone poorly. And that's why we play the game. So it's going to be a lot of fun. This week will surely be no different. But without further ado, let's get into one of my favorite sections and really the entire purpose of this channel. And that is, of course, the notebook. This is where we look at course facts. We look at the key course statistics that are going to help us make great decisions this week. We look at winning trends, course history, best performers, comp courses, although there aren't many this week, as you'll see. But that's the idea here. That's what we're going to get into. And it all starts with some of our course facts. This is Bellerive is a golf course designed by Robert Trent Jones Sr. back in 1960. And the Jones family, the RTJ brand, is very strong. They design great golf courses, typically stunning layouts with beautiful bunkering and a lot of high shot values. And Bellerive is no different. It's a par 70 measuring 7,448 yards, which is about 132 yards longer than 2018 PGA. They added some length. We'll take a look at this scorecard. They added some length to some holes. Really, one hole was changed dramatically, and that's the signature hole on the golf course, number 17, where they added a back tee that plays over 600 yards, and they have another tee box that plays 550 yards. They also changed the angle of this hole, so it used to work kind of across a creek on the right side. And now you're more straight on line. It's a straighter hole from the new tee boxes with that creek immediately on the right side of the fairway. So it should create a demanding test. And I imagine they'll use both tee boxes. And some days it will be very reachable, and other days it will be very difficult to reach, measuring over 600 yards. The surfaces on this golf course are bent grass. The greens since 2018. I always want to say 19 because Brooks Koepka won the PGA both years, and I associate majors with the players who won them. This was the 2018 PGA. Since then, they put all new bent grass greens in. They rebuilt them and resurfaced them. And a big portion of this decision really came from the way the greens played in 18. They were very soft. There wasn't a great root system. And if you listen to some of the player quotes about it, wedges were kind of splatting on the green. They weren't spinning. They were leaving a dark, muddy kind of ball mark. And then even 6-irons were kind of splatting and behaving the same way. So they rebuilt them to accommodate the firmer playing conditions that are required on the PGA Tour now. So I'm very curious to see how those are going to play. They are not brand new. These greens were rebuilt and regrassed very shortly after the PGA in 2018. So we're not dealing with new greens. They should be mature, and they should be in even better shape than they were in 2026. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how all that plays out with this golf course. Again, I think there are some things that are very important to look at here. This is a look at the scorecard, and there are some things to pay attention to. Notably, the 8th hole, which is a par 5, is 613 yards. And then 17, the other par 5, you see here 624 on the card. Can also play at about 550. So the PGA Tour field staff will have some options with number 17. Some of the other holes were lengthened by 10 yards. In total, 6 holes were lengthened. But the real significant one is number 17. That makes up most of the 132 yards that was added to the golf course. So, but as you can see on this scorecard, there's a lot of longer par 4s. You got 5-10 at number 10, 11 shorter, under 400 yards. But you have some mid-rangers like 1 and 2 of 424, 427. Another long one at 4. 5 is 489. That's a longer par 4 for sure. And then you got a short one at 7. So there's a lot of variation in the lengths of these holes. And I think that creates some options for players to hit less than driver. I know that's not a great term to use, but you'll see some fairway woods and irons off some of these tees to take bunkers out of play or get the ball into a specific position. And you'll see a lot of holes where players hit drivers as well. So it is a interesting golf course in that regard. But all in all, the really important stuff comes when you start looking at some of these stats. This is, again, just from the 2018 PGA and how this golf course stacked up against all the other golf courses on tour that year. It was the 14th toughest golf course with a scoring average of 70.13. While that is on the challenging side, it was a very easy PGA Championship. And in fact, in the last 10 years, it's had the second easiest scoring average for a PGA Championship, with the exception of Valhalla. So this was definitely on the easier side in 2018, but still played over par. The birdie average was the 12th fewest birdies. Again, that's on the difficult side for a PGA Tour venue, not for a major championship. So we'll see how those things come into play. The driving distance for all tee shots was 286 yards. That was the 19th shortest on the PGA Tour, which signifies that players are hitting less than driver on a number of holes. That opportunity certainly exists. I would expect that to go up this week just because the game has changed a little bit since 2018. But you'll still see some variety off the tee where guys hit less than driver. If it's a very driver-heavy golf course, you're seeing this statistic. Driving distance for all drives above 295 for the most part. Sometimes it even touches 300. At 286, that's on the shorter side. But players do find fairways. 65% of the fairways were found back in 2018. Again, this was soft conditions. There were some storms that week, which makes fairways wider, but they're not overly difficult to hit. And the greens, which are somewhat large, were also fairly easy to hit. 27th hardest greens to hit. Again, some of that has to do with the receptiveness, which I think you'll see better condition greens, but I do believe they'll still be receptive. I think it's very difficult to let bent grass greens burn out the way they burnt out last week in Memphis. They were very brown. Those were Bermuda grass greens, which are meant to handle heat. I don't think you're quite going to see the BMW this week get on that extreme. It's going to be hot again. I think there'll be a little more water on the greens than we saw last week. But anyway, they were the 27th hardest greens to hit in 2018. This is the biggest difference and something to really pay attention to. The fairway proximity in 18 was 30 feet 4 inches, which was the 24th largest, hardest, however you want to say it, on the PGA Tour. But look what happened when you were in the rough. The rough proximity swells to 51 feet 4 inches, which was the 5th hardest on the PGA Tour. That's the first statistic on this page that really looks like a major championship. So they can grow some healthy, bluegrass, bent grass kind of rough. It's not Bermuda rough, but they can grow some healthy rough, and it can create a problem. And with a lot of the angles and the bunkers that guard the greens, the rough can definitely and does create a problem. So it's interesting because it's not difficult to hit the fairways, not particularly difficult, but when you miss, it's very penal. So you want to get the ball in play. This kind of reminds me of a Muirfield Village like stat profile where you can hit the fairways. They're generous. You should hit them. But when you miss, watch out because now now trouble really starts. So getting the ball in play will be valuable. But when we look at the top 10 finishers in 2018, I think you'll see a different story. They're not really players who were leading in driving accuracy. In fact, I don't have that on a graphic, but well, let's move on to the next slide, and then I'll tell you about the driving accuracy from there. But these are the I got ahead of myself here. This is another important aspect, and this has a big effect when you're in the rough. These are the holes with water in play on approach shots. Again, there were 159 water balls in 2018. It was the 10th most on tour. That's not quite like a TPC Twin Cities. It's not quite up to the level of a PGA National or a TPC Southwind. You're not going to see that many water balls, but it is a factor. And there are a couple of tee shots with water in play, but these are the holes with water in play on the approach shot. Number 2, 3, 6, 11, 13, and 17. They all have water pretty much right immediately guarding the green. And so, again, you may see there. Looking at this, including tee shots, you have there's water off the tee at number 5 as well. But pretty much all of these are right here. This is pretty much all the water in play. You may see a slightly different number, but some of the holes, there's one hole with water in play way long of the green. These are immediately greenside, these water hazards. And that's enough to create some problems. Number of these are on par 3s. So it's definitely a factor to pay attention to. And I think it's really going to highlight the importance of iron play, course management, and eventually, except for the par 3s, this does go back to driving accuracy. Getting the ball in play is going to be an important aspect. But now we'll take a look at the top 10 from 2018. These are all your top 10 finishers. Brooks Koepka won at 16 under. I have 2 key statistics here. This is strokes gained tee to green and strokes gained putting. There are a lot more stats that I have right here in front of me, but these are the most notable. And I almost never see this. Okay. I look at winning scores and winning statistics every week. And I almost never see a situation where everybody in the top 10, you got 11 guys in the top 10 here. All 11 of them were better from tee to green than they were putting. That just doesn't happen in top 10s. It might happen among winners over a period of time, which I look at every week as well. But this doesn't happen. You always have somebody who just had a great putting week and finds their way in the top 10 and didn't necessarily hit the ball very well. Not the case here. Koepka was 2nd tee to green, 18th in putting. Tiger Woods, 8th tee to green, 10th in strokes gained putting. He was the only player in this of these 11, the only player to finish top 10 in strokes gained putting. Adam Scott was 6th tee to green, 19th in putting. Stuart Sink, how about this? Stuart Sink led the field strokes gained tee to green. He was 71st in putting, and he finished in a tie for 4th, along with John Rahm. 12th tee to green, 22nd in putting. Francesco Molinari in 2018, he was fresh off a win at the Open Championship, 3rd tee to green, 53rd in putting. Thomas Pieters, just a couple years removed from a great Ryder Cup experience in 2016. He was 15th tee to green, 26th in putting. Justin Thomas, 5th tee to green and 45th putting. Gary Woodland, 10th tee to green, 31st putting. Rafa Cabrera Bello, 20th tee to green, 27th putting. And Tyrrell Hatton was 4th tee to green and 58th putting. So all of these players were right up there near the top in strokes gained tee to green. They were all top 20. And all but one was in the top 15. Talking about just 11 players. So the best tee to green players made their way to the top of the leaderboard, and it's pretty much unanimous. So I think that's a really strong category. We'll be looking at strokes gained tee to green in this show for sure. Moving on along here, these are the winning trends. Before I get into these, I just wanted to read you the driving accuracy numbers. So let's actually cycle back here. So you can keep looking at this leaderboard. I want to talk a little about driving accuracy. Koepka was 14th in driving accuracy. Woods was 74th. Adam Scott was 63rd. Stewart Cink was 40th. Rahm was 40th. Molinari was 6th. Peters was 51st. JT was 51st. Woodland was 14th. He led in strokes gained off the tee. Rafa was 24th. Tyrrell Hatton was 63rd. So not a lot of accurate hitters there, even though there was a big penalty for missing the fairways. And they all panned out pretty well in approaching the green. The putting, I already mentioned, not overly strong. Scrambling had some pretty strong dimensions there. And there were a couple of long hitters. Koepka was first in driving distance for all drives and won. Adam Scott was 16th. Rahm was 7th. Peters was 2nd. JT was 10th. Woodland was 11th. So I do think there's a big, there's a stronger preference to distance over accuracy. That was clear in 2018. But the tee to green stuff is the strongest correlation by far. So we'll move on now to some of the trends. 8 of the top 11 finishers were top 10 tee to green. I mentioned 10 of them were top 15. So they all found their way right up the top of the board. Only 1 of the 11 top 10 finishers were top 10 in strokes gained putting. 7 of the 11 were top 25 in driving distance. 8 of the top 10 finishers were top 16 in strokes gained approach. Another really strong correlation. 10 of the 11 top 10 finishers hit between 52 and 57 greens. So you had to hit a lot of greens, but greens of regulation wasn't necessarily a huge separator. But if the players that missed were also top 10 in scrambling, or they were top 20 in scrambling, top 10 for the week. A lot of really good scrambling numbers. Koepka was 2nd, for instance. Francesco Molinari, who hit 53 greens, he was 1st in scrambling. Tiger was 13th. John Rahm was 2nd, and he hit 54 greens. So when they missed, they got up and down. I think that'll be important again. Although, looking at the strokes gain around the green numbers, there were a lot of guys that didn't perform very well around the green. For instance, Koepka was 44th in strokes gain around the green, but 2nd in scrambling. That to me highlights the putting a little bit, where it's just solid putting. So I am going to pay attention to putting on bent grass greens this week, more so than scrambling or around the green. But I do think there's the strongest trends are in the tee to green stuff for sure. That's really where you want to be paying attention. We'll move along here to some of the statistics that we're going to get into. So first and foremost, this is of the 50 players in this field. These are the top 10 in strokes gained total over the last 24 rounds. Now we're going to do something pretty cool in these statistics today, and I'm going to mark who has been a repeat offender. We don't have any comp courses today. There's no official data on that, but we do have we do have a lot of these strokes gain categories that we're going to go through to make up for it. So Scheffler, no surprise, is first. Sam Burns is second. Looked a lot like the leaderboard heading into Sunday last week. Hideki Matsuyama third, Tommy Fleetwood fourth, Tom Kim, Matt Fitzpatrick, Wyndham Clark, Siwoo Kim, Viktor Hovland, and Michael Brennan. So, of course, these are the guys right now that are playing the best. And I think just watching golf, seeing leaderboards, you'd notice all these names as guys that are playing well. And yes, the statistics bear that out. So let's break it down a little bit more. I do think driving will be very important, which we're going to get into, but tee to green is the most important aspect here. So we look at total. Now we're going to take putting out of it. Scotty Scheffler, Hideki Matsuyama, Siwoo Kim, Sam Burns, Tommy Fleetwood, Tom Kim, Cameron Young, Viktor Hovland, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Michael Thorbjornsen. You could see a little star next to 8 of those players. The star means they were on the last page as well. So the guys that are playing the best overall are also performing the best tee to green. A guy like Cameron Young and Michael Thorbjornsen, this tells me that they're trailing a little bit in the putting categories. And so they didn't quite make it into that list. And then you have the guys that were on the last page that made it, that didn't make it onto this list are doing a little more with their putter, which not necessarily a bad thing, but this is the page I'm paying most attention to. And again, it's a lot of these guys that have just been playing the best lately. It doesn't take a statistician to recognize that. Now we're going to go to off the tee performance. I do think driving is a very important aspect here, specifically distance, but I prefer to go to off the tee play. This is just a sign that these are guys that hit it a long way and they're avoiding penalties and they're getting the ball in a place where they can, they're beating the field off the tee. So Rory McIlroy leads the way. First time we see him. Chris Gotterup is in second. Then you got Scotty Scheffler. Third time we've seen him. Cameron Young. Seen him now for a second time. Everything except strokes gained total. Xander Schauffele. Hideki Matsuyama. Seen him again. He's been on every slide so far. Ludwig Oberg. Ryan Gerard. That one surprised me. Michael Brennan. Not surprising. Second time we've seen him. And Gary Woodland, who also finished top 10 here back in 2018. Now we're going to go to the approach play. Maybe the most important slide of all of them, especially when you combine it with the stars. Sam Burns, now a 2-star general, if you will. Tom Kim, 2 stars for him. That means they've been on 3 slides. Siwoo Kim as well. And really no surprise there. Those guys have been flushing it with their irons. Then you got Scotty Scheffler. He's been on every slide so far. He's our first 3-star general. Viktor Hovland, 2 stars. Patrick Cantlay making a first appearance. Matt Fitzpatrick having his best approach play season of his entire career. That's no surprise to see him there. Colin Morikawa making a first start here. Again, not surprising to see him on this page for approach. Hideki Matsuyama, our second 3-star general, been on every page so far. And Jake Knapp rounds out the top 10 over the last 24 rounds in strokes gained approach. Now we'll move on to the next one, which is the best putters on bent grass greens specifically. Ryan Gerard leading the way. Okay, now Ryan Gerard was a guy that was very popular at the Wyndham, and I stayed away from him because he had been putting great, but he didn't have a great record on Bermuda heading into that tournament, and it didn't turn out to be a great week for him. So maybe there's something there. This may be a good spot for Ryan Gerard, he shows up in the off the tee performance, maybe perhaps a sign he's swinging pretty well, and now shows up in putting specifically on bent for 2026. Colin Morikawa is second. So now he pops on the approach play and the putting. It's a pretty good combination, if you ask me. That earns him a star. Wyndham Clark, that earns him a star. Sam Burns, now a 3-star general. Welcome to the party. Not surprising to see Sam Burns on a putting list. Jake Knapp making his second appearance. Tommy Fleetwood making his third. Viktor Hovland making his fourth. Christopher Rayton, at big win this year at Quail Hollow, although that was not on bentgrass greens. That was on Bermuda greens. Maverick McNeely coming in at number 9, and Scotty Scheffler, now a 4-star general. Okay, now there's one final statistics page here that I want to look at. By the way, Scotty's been on every single slide. It may not be surprising to you, but to see him show up on the putting list as well is really scary for the rest of the field. Really scary. Not scary for me, though. I love watching it. These are the best players in the BMW Championship since 2020. Now, you think of places like Olympia Fields. You think of places like Wilmington Country Club, Caves Valley. I think these are pretty strong and comparable courses in, for the most part, similar parts of the country. We've had similar grass types on all of these venues. I think the BMW setups are, while it travels, there's a little merit to this. So I decided to throw this in here. These are the best performers of the BMW Championship since 2020. Robert McIntyre leads the way. Basically, he just has 2 starts, and he has a second and a WD last week as well. Ludwig Oberg is second. Sam Burns becoming a 4-star general. Scotty Scheffler, 5-star general. No surprise there. Rory McIlroy, number 5. That's his second time on the board, earns him a star. Tommy Fleetwood, 3-star general. Patrick Cantlay earns a star. He was also on the approach play aspect. Adam Scott, who also played pretty well in 2018. He finished 3rd here at Bellerive. Ben Griffin, Ricky Fowler. Ricky Fowler wasn't on the list because he didn't finish in the top 10, but he did finish tied 12th. So performs well in BMW Championships and has performed well at Bellerive in the past as well. Now we'll move on to the summary page of our star earners. So Scotty Scheffler was the only guy to earn 5 stars. That means he was on all 6 slides. Your second appearance earns you a star. Sam Burns, 4-star general. Tommy Fleetwood, Viktor Hovland, and Hideki Matsuyama earned 3 stars. Matt Fitzpatrick, Tom Kim, and Siwoo Kim earned 2. Rory McIlroy, Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa, Wyndham Clark, and Jake Knapp also earned a star. So this page is a pretty good place to start. The problem is there's not a lot of sleepers on here. These are kind of guys you would expect. So we're going to go through some players now, and I got about 10 of them that I want to quickly go through. But that being said, a number of them that we're going to talk about do have stars, and there's a handful that don't. They didn't make any of these lists, but I still really like their profile. So we're going to start with, I'm not going to go to Scotty Scheffler. I don't think there's any need to talk about it, although I'm very much enjoying seeing Scotty Scheffler perform this way like we did last week. I love watching greatness, and that's what you watch with Scotty Scheffler. So a win for him this week would not surprise me. In fact, I'm expecting it, but we don't need to go through the breakdown on that. But we are going to talk a little Sam Burns. I'm not necessarily picking him, but I just want you to see, looking at this here as I share my screen. This is rickrungood.com, I believe the best data site in the industry. And you just look at, these are approach numbers right here, this middle column. And what Sam Burns has done over the last 7 weeks has just been incredible with his iron play. He played the Open and then last week in Memphis. I don't think he's going to be tired. I'm not worried about that. He did lose it a little bit in Memphis with the driver. I think he'll be able to get away with a little more, even though the proximity goes way up. And this kind of grass should be beneficial for Sam Burns, and he'll have better luck playing from the rough, in my opinion. And then you look at this putting, which really has been great over the last 4 weeks for sure, but it's been great for a lot longer than that. He is, in my opinion, the best putter on the PGA Tour. So I love what I'm seeing from Sam Burns in a lot of different respects. I don't think there's really any reason to nitpick him. He's played very well at Caves Valley. very well at Castle Pines. These are all great results in BMW championships. So he very much likes these setups. And I think this is absolutely a great spot for him. The next player I want to get into is Siwoo Kim. And I like what I'm seeing out of Siwoo as well. He's at 9,100 on DraftKings. And this is the reason why it's really hard to look away from this putting performance from Siwoo. I'm sorry, this is his approach play performance. The putting performance is the thing that worries me when it comes to Siwoo. But yes, this is a tee to green monster. And on a golf course that requires tee to green, look at this. I mean, you got to go all the way back to the Truist Championship to find an event where he didn't gain significant strokes tee to green. Picked up 10 at the Cadillac. I mean, these are some really good numbers. 9 at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson tee to green. And then in his last 4, 6.2, 5.5, 5.7, 8.8. The only way Siwoo has a bad finish is if the putter goes really bad. He lost a half a shot last week and finished second. I think it's worth giving Siwoo a look and another chance here. Also took the Wyndham off, which it makes me feel better. He's not like Hideki's playing his 7th week in a row. I'm just a little worried about that. I'm not worried about that for Siwoo Kim. And I'm not worried about it for Viktor Hovland either. Viktor Hovland, very strong performer in our lists earlier. And you can see why here. He performs very well with his irons. I think there's some good signs that he's feeling very good about his game. Ended up losing a shot, 1.8 strokes off the tee. But if you break this down by round, it was a terrible weekend. He did drive it really well in rounds 1 and round 2, which I'm optimistic about. And basically, he just lost his game over the weekend. I think it was a hard golf course. I think he was living on the edge. And I think this will be a better spot for him. So I'm going right back to Viktor Hovland because his iron play has just been so good lately. And he tends to play really well at the BMW Championship. Of course, he won at Olympia Fields in 2023, finished tied 7th last year. Castle Pines may be the one BMW venue that's very different than this, just because it's at such a high altitude. But other than that, some really good stuff in the BMW for Viktor Hovland. So I like what I'm seeing there. Speaking of good BMW Championship performers, we go to Patrick Cantlay. Very excited about Patrick Cantlay here. And I just love what he's done with his approach play. Again, this always catches my attention. But he's gained nearly 2, then nearly 7, then over 5.5 last week. He came in tied 12th last week, losing a shot putting. And now he heads to bent grass greens. This is another pretty cool tool here where you look at their performances historically on different green surfaces, and bent grass is the best for Patrick Cantlay. So I love that aspect. And I think that's reflected in this record in BMW championships, which of course he won at Wilmington and Caves Valley, which I think are reasonable comp courses here. He won both of those, then tied 15th, tied 13th in 23 and 24. Also finished second at Medina in 2019. Yeah, he has a great record in BMW championships and tends to putt very well. Gained 14.5 shots at Caves Valley back in 2021. So I think there's a pretty good chance that Patrick Cantlay's iron play continues, and you see a little spike in what he's doing on the greens. Really looking forward to seeing Patrick Cantlay, who's a 1-star guy on our list. Now we get to some of the players we haven't discussed yet because they either only made 1 page or no pages on our previous lists. And it starts with Xander Schauffele. He's definitely on the more expensive side, probably not playing him with Scotty if you're playing fantasy, but I like what I'm seeing out of Xander. This is a guy trended in the right direction, gaining over a shot off the tee and approach the green in his last 3 events. The driver has been a weapon all year long. Lost strokes at the Farmers, which was his first event of 2026. Again at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and once more in Scotland, just a half a shot. Other than that, his driving has been elite. The putter has been something that's kind of caused problems when Xander hasn't had great weeks. But he is coming in here off 2 really good weeks on different putting surfaces. On the Bermuda greens, gained 3 strokes last week, gained nearly 3 at the Rocket Classic. Things are looking good for Xander, and his best surface is technically Poa annua, but it's pretty darn good on bent grass as well. So this feels like a perfect spot for Xander Schauffele. We'll check out his BMW record. And like most tournaments, when you look at Xander, yeah, he's got 3 top 10s in his last 4 BMW starts. So, yeah, Xander going to be a factor this week, and I think things are really going to turn around for him. Another player that has my interest is Kurt Kitayama. I like what I've seen out of Kurt Kitayama lately. He's really impressed me. He's been more consistent than I always give him credit for when I'm just thinking about him top of mind. But iron play has been really good. He's gained over a shot in 5 out of the last 6 weeks. His driver has been very good as well, gaining strokes in 4 out of the last 6 weeks. Actually, 5 out of the last 7 weeks. And he's putted well last couple of events too, including the 3M bentgrass greens. Gained 2.1 strokes putting there en route to finishing tied 24th. You got a little better value with Kurt Kitayama, but this looks like a guy that's trending in the right direction. And a couple nice finishes in BMW championships as well. I think these are really good setups for him. Now, we got to get to our next player, which I'm very excited to get to because I have a little bit of sound for Ricky Fowler. I'll hit you with it. Fowler. Oh yeah, Ricky baby, playing great golf, kind of grinding through the heat. But look at what he's done ball striking lately. This has just been awesome. You're talking about 5 out of his last 6 events. He's gained strokes off the tee, and 4 straight approaching the green, gaining over 2 strokes. That's a really big deal if you ask me. And he's been putting really well too. You could argue that's on a heater. Gained 3.8 strokes putting at the Rocket Classic. Again, bent grass greens, really important there. The one thing holding him back is the short game. And I kind of think that's okay here. If you're putting well, you can get the ball on the green and you'll have some putts for par. But hopefully you can go out there and hit over 50 greens of regulation, and you're not going to have to deal with the short game too much. This kind of looks like the trend of what we saw in the top 10 finishers from 2018. Ricky's playing at that level right now. So he definitely makes my list again this week. Had him last week. It was a disappointing Sunday. I think he kind of got hot, but a little rest and recovery, and he's going to be making a push for the Tour Championship. One of the last men into the BMW was Michael Brennan. And I am so impressed with his talent and his ability. He's 7,300. He's one of the best values in this field. Struggled with his approach play last week. That can happen at Southwind. It's a very uncomfortable golf course to hit iron shots into. But I'm looking at a guy before that who gained over 4.5 shots in 3 straight. While he struggled at the Open as well, he gained over 1.5 shots in 3 straight before that. So his iron play is definitely trending in the right direction, in spite of a tough performance last week approaching the greens. And his putting is something he's been putting a lot of time and a lot of effort into. And he's gained over 1.5 shots in 4 straight weeks. Some of them on Bermuda greens. His best putting performance, well, his second best was at the Rocket Classic on Bermuda greens, where he gained 7.4 strokes. Really liking what Michael Brennan brings to the table. I think the distance goes a long way. And that's kind of the model we saw back in the 2018 PGA with Gary Woodland, who I also like at 6,600. I think he's a great value. He finished in the top 10 here in 2018, had the lead after 36 holes, and perhaps just major championship pressure got to him. He would go on to win the U.S. Open in 2019, the very next year. But this is a guy that I think has played some pretty good golf this year. You see these little spikes where he has great iron performances. The 3M, interestingly, Bermuda greens. The U.S. Open, he struck the ball beautifully. Some of these bigger golf courses, like the Truist, like the PGA, hits the ball really well. And you see putting performances pop up at the Charles Schwab, which is in Texas, with bent grass greens. The U.S. Open, those greens were more like POA, but definitely not Bermuda greens. 3M Open, Bermuda bent grass greens, just like we're seeing this week. So I think this is a guy that's putting well. He's an elite driver and has a ability to really spike with the irons. This is a value play that I'm looking for. I'm really interested in. Take a look at his BMW Championship resume, and it's middling for the most part, but he does tend to hit the ball really well, and has putted well at Aronimink. That's all the way back in 2018, 19 and 20. So he hasn't played in these very recently, but has had some good putting experiences on the traditionally bent grass greens that we see in BMW Championships. Just one more guy I want to share some thoughts on. He's another value play at 6,500. He had a poor performance last week, finishing tied 61st. The Wyndham didn't go very well either. But what I like to see is this performance has been a big struggle for him. And these are either fescue greens or Bermuda greens. Even at the Travelers, where you have like a bent POA mix, he putted better. RBC Canadian Open, bent greens. He picked up 2.7 strokes, much better performance. The Memorial on bent, much better putting performance. I think you see an uptick in putting, and we're looking at a guy that is an absolute stripe show, tee to green. Ever since the Memorial, basically every week except one, he's gained significant strokes off the tee and approaching the green. I'm looking for a big turnaround on the greens from Alex Fitzpatrick this week with the change in surfaces. And I think that makes him a very live candidate this week at Bellerive. So that's all we have here for our players in this field. And I hope you enjoyed that. Pretty cool to go through that with you and be able to share that screen. Again, that's rickrungood.com. I just want to remind you, make sure you check out the Second Cup podcast on YouTube. We're also previewing the BMW Championship over there. That's Tuesday night at somewhere around 5 o'clock. We'll have round recaps over there as well. I'm on that show with Rick Gaiman and Mark Immelman. So make sure you jump over there, subscribe to that channel as well, and subscribe right here on Greg DuCharme Golf. I've really enjoyed conversing with all of you and answering your questions and seeing your comments after these videos each week. It's been a great deal of fun for me. So I hope you enjoyed this. Enjoy the BMW Championship. Like and subscribe to that channel. Join the Second Cup podcast as well. And we'll talk to you. If you follow on the Second Cup, we'll talk to you again on Tuesday night and on Friday night and on Sunday night. So we got a lot more to talk about with the BMW. If you're just keeping it right here, we'll be back with a Tour Championship preview next week. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you next time. And now I'm going to officially click the button and end the video.